All right, in the overview, the idea is to, once again, arrange things in a way that is visually clear. And if you look at this, it's not all that different from what you would find in a typical lesson planning book that you would find in most schools. This is, except it has the learning goals and the topics and activities and the lesson objective rather than the standards. The standards are not listed here. Do remember, though, that your standards are correlated to each of the learning goals, and you reported that back when you did your reporting of the learning goals. So you will provide a unit overview, and in that unit overview, you are going to make it clear which lesson is going to deal with which learning goal, what the activities are going to be, and in this case, you do list all of the activities. You are not required to describe all of the activities. I'll talk about that in a moment, but you are required to list all of the activities that you will use. Then the lesson objective. Quick word about lesson objectives. Objectives are not goals. Goals are general statements about what kids will know or be able to do. Lesson objectives are statements that include the student will do what, under what conditions, and how well. What is the student going to do? What are the conditions under which they will do it, and how well? If you have questions about writing an appropriate lesson objective, please ask your instructor. The next is the assessment, which you have done. Now, these are going to be the statements of formative assessment. And if you remember, in the plan for assessment, you did a pretest. You have already constructed what will be your post-test because your pre- and post-tests are the same. And now in each of these sections, you're going to be writing what your formative assessments will be. You do not have to attach copies of those assessments to this document. You will be asked to attach your lesson plans, and they will have all the specifics of the assessments. And then anything else that you're going to be doing in those lessons that relates to the learning goals. Now, just so that you don't feel restricted by this, please look at the first sort of star there. This is one way that the information may be organized, but it is not the only way. And if you have a different way that you'd like to present the information, just check with your instructor. It's probably going to be just fine as long as it's clear. Now, a quick word, I did mention the need for only 3 of the unit activities to be described. Note that in the verbiage here at the top that's in white is written or is copied straight out of the prompt, and this is the activities/technology sections of the prompt. You are supposed to describe 3, at least 3 unit activities that reflect a variety of instructional strategies or techniques. You will be required to do 3. You are not required to do more than 3, but the 3 that you choose need to meet the criteria that are listed below when you describe them. So do think in terms of which ones of these are going to clearly show the content and how it relates to the instructional goals. You're going to want to show how the activity stems out of your pre-assessment. So you're going to refer back to your pre-assessment And you're going to justify the fact that you're doing this activity because it supports one of the students' needs, or one of the needs that the students have for their achievement. You're going to list the materials and the technology that you're going to need to implement the activity. And then you're going to talk very briefly about what the formative assessment is going to be, because remember, these activities are all within lesson plans. We are defining the assessment that happens in the lesson plan as formative. So you're going to be describing the assessment that is necessary to make sure that the kids have actually grasped this. The logic of all of this is that as you are doing the activities, as you're teaching, as you're moving your students through the learning goals, remember there are a few things that you're really focusing on for each learning goal. There are some things that you don't need to focus on based on the data that you have from your pre-assessment. So because you don't have to do everything, you're being asked to talk about how these things that you are focusing on are related and supported, and how you're guaranteeing, as it were, the learning for these kids. And the last part there is pretty clear. The technology, I mentioned this before. If you're going to use no technology whatsoever, you will need to have a clear and logical rationale for it. If you're trying to teach a class of students how to shoot a foul shot, it may be that you don't have the necessary kinds of technologies to videotape them while they're doing that, or to in some way support their learning. If you don't have the necessary technology, if it's not common to the schools, then say that. But you will need to have a good rationale for why you're not using technology, because in schools today, the use of technology is a given. Finally, watch the rubric. And I say this on every one of the tutorials, but really pay attention to the rubric. The expectations are pretty clear. In this case, the use of the contextual information and the data to select the appropriate relevant activities, assignments, resources, and later on you'll be talking about the how you pace your instruction, all of that. Most of the instruction, note the yellow, most instruction has been designed with reference to contextual factors and pre-assessment data. There is some room for error here. There is not an expectation that you will be 100% flawless. But if you're doing all of this work, the real benefit is not that you're going to get a 3 on this section of the rubric. It's that your students are going to learn, and you're going to see that your instruction is effective. Also, use of technology, and I can't pound this too strongly. This, again, just goes back to the idea that you need to make sure that when you're talking about technology, you're either using it for a good reason or you're not using it for a better reason. The next section is going to be about the kind of keeping track of what goes on. It's instructional decision making. And I would encourage you to listen to that before you go out and teach the lessons for your teacher work sample, because it's not something that can be done in retrospect. So there you go.